My title is career practitioner. So it's kind of like a guidance counselor. I have been working with Edmonton Public School Board for 10 years in March, working with older high school students. So they're fourth and fifth year, but like at that stage where they're ready to take the next step into post-secondary or their career planning, like whether that's apprenticeship, college, or some kind of training for post-sec. So I've been doing that for like, yeah, almost 10 years. And then before that, I worked for college in recruitment and advising as well. And I taught adult ed. I taught English in the evenings for almost 10 years as well. So I've kind of been working in adult ed advising for my whole career.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've been involved with students for a lot of your career.
Yes. And I think the same, like the demographic of this project, like they've all been adults. So I graduated in 2009 with my Bachelor of Education degree in secondary ed. And I continued to only work with adults. Like I never worked with junior high or even a local community school. It was all adult ed. So, and all like, I think that's what makes this like project a good fit because that's all I've been doing is like that, like grade 12 or 30 level, like next step is university, not like the younger kids. So yeah, it's been really good.
And obviously you've enjoyed it so far, right?
Yeah, I really like it. I think adult ed is like where my heart lies. Like, I don't know. It's an interesting topic to think about, like what next step I might do, because this is sort of like connected to the conversation, like with young people trying to figure out what their first step is with university or college or what they want to do. And like the truth is like we're always evolving, right? Like what you do or what career you set out to do, you likely are going to evolve, grow. We don't stay in the same jobs like our parents or, the older generations. We kind of like to try new things. And I've always thought I might go back to school, but I don't know for sure if I will or not.
Did you get like your master's?
Yeah. And for a long time, I wanted to get into like more personal counseling because my role at the high school that I work at is like post-secondary advising, financial aid. I work with our LGBTQ population, but then as soon as it kind of moves into like anxiety or depression or things like that, then I have to refer them. So I always was wondering if maybe I'd like to take on that as well. But yeah, I need to go back to school and get my master's degree. So I don't know yet. We'll see.
Well, I think you'll do well.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like you just have to take a step, right? Which is like what these kids have to do. Like the youth that we're referring to and talking to is just taking the first step, right? So
yeah. I've talked to a couple of students about counselors at their school, like guidance counselors, obviously. And their number one thing that I keep running into is how much older these counselors are than them, right? Right. So they'll be coming out of high school or they'll be in high school and they'll have a counselor that's maybe 60 years old or 50 something years old. And they feel like they can't really relate to them. Right. So it's good to have a young person in that role, kind of guiding them along where they feel comfortable enough to tell them any kind of situation or whatever situation they're going through and how to seek guidance, essentially.
Yeah, I guess I never thought about that, but that does make sense. Like that you could feel like that sense of relatability. And even with me kind of being in the same shoes in a sense, like considering going back to school and trying to compare different programs or the cost, figuring out how I would pay for it, what type of like, career options would come out of a graduate degree, I guess is like kind of similar to what students are trying to figure out in high school, right?
Absolutely. And we're happy to have you on board because it seems like you have a wealth of knowledge to share with us too, right? And
Thank you.
For sure.
Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is a great opportunity. I'm really excited to be here.
That's good. How does high school send transcripts over?
Yes, great question. Okay, so this is I wanted to show an example. So transcripts are tricky. Students have to look at the specific institution that they want to go to for how to apply. because there's no blanket rule across all institutions, because there are different types of universities and post-secondaries. Some are private, some are polytechnic, some are like almost like kind of apprenticeship meets, like a, for example, like to go to school to study to be a hairstylist or an esthetician. It kind of meets apprenticeship meets college, so it's a totally different format. So all of that to say that it varies by school. So what we could do is look at, for example, like if we go to the University of Toronto, so I'm on their main page, and when we're like, okay, how do I find this? Sometimes you have to kind of play around, but for a future student, this is where we're going to click. We're going to look, it's going to give you some information. And here we have, okay, what undergraduate programs does the U of T have? Admissions, what are the U of T's requirements? So if we click on that, it's going to take us to like what we actually need. So there's all kinds of information here. So let's click on requirements. Find requirements. And this is all to get to how to apply. But here you can see, you can click on which province or territory you live in to get the specific courses that you need to apply.
Okay.
So we're in the Ontario one, Ontario Secondary School Diploma. So this is an example of a school that requires a high school diploma and 6 grade 12 university or academic level subjects. You know, whereas some provinces only require 5. And then they give more information here down at the bottom. Like there's tons of information online, but how do we get to? So Ontario has and this is what I was trying to get to, a centralized application system. So does BC, so does Alberta. Lots of provinces do, but not all. So a student who's in Ontario trying to go to university in Ontario would access this application. And it's a centralized website or platform that students would fill in their information about themselves. So obviously their contact information, what high schools they went to, what courses they took, their citizenship status, languages, all of that. They fill it in one kind of this like online system, and then they choose the school that they want to apply to. So once they choose the school that they apply to, they make sure they choose their first and second program choices, any additional information that they require, pay the application fee. And then typically with these centralized application systems, the transcript is automatically made available to the university. So it's convenient in that way that you don't have to worry about sending it. You don't have to update them all the time with it. They have access to that transcript on an ongoing basis. So if a student applies in, let's say, October, the university will pull their transcript, assess them for eligibility for admission, and either offer them a spot or say, okay, at the moment you're not eligible, but we will try again once we see new coursework, once you've finished your semester 1 math, English, whatever, and we'll pull your transcript again. And then you don't have to send it in. You don't have to worry about that. They automatically have access to that transcript. So that's kind of the pro of these centralized systems, because you don't have to worry about it. But as I mentioned before, there are schools that you have to send your transcript, and then you would have to, the important thing here is that the transcript has to be sent by the issuing institution to the university. It cannot be like, oh, here I printed it off, I'm going to physically take it to the school. It has to be an official transcript issued by the institution. So what that means is wherever you went to high school, your high school doesn't issue your transcript. It's the Ministry of Education in that province that issues the transcript. So usually you can order it online if you have to. It costs usually like maybe $10, $15, and you just tell them where you want it to be sent. So of course, if a student if you end up having to send your transcript, you want to try to send it just once, like you don't have to send it multiple times. And so usually you can say when you want to send your transcript to the institution, when you want it to be sent. So if I'm a high school student and I am not going to be done my courses until June. If I send my transcript now, like today, it's not going to have my final marks from when I finish my courses in June, right? So for me, I might say, I request my June results be sent. And so then they wouldn't get your official final transcript until then. This is tricky. Like, this is where I would say definitely if you are able to see your high school counselor about this part, I would really recommend, because it can be a little bit tricky knowing if you have to or if you don't have to, right? Example of where in Alberta we have a centralized system as well. So it looks like this. So students have to create this online account in order to access the application system, which looks.
What website is that again?
So this is My Alberta Digital ID. A lot of provinces have something similar where it's like that centralized, you can access like your health records. When we get to looking at applying for student loans, you often need something like this to apply. Like in Alberta, you have to have a verified ID. In BC, you have to have a verified ID. I bet you in Ontario, you have to have a verified ID. So it would be something like this, even though it'll vary by province.
Okay.
So if we click on available services, like these are all of the different kind of websites that exist under the umbrella of this platform. So student aid, which we haven't gotten to yet, but Apply Alberta, that's what ours is called. So we were looking at the Ontario one, right? It's like OUAC, but this is ours in Alberta. It looks like this. So if you click on here, it shows you like. So I've filled out all of this information about myself, high school history, my marks, all of that. And now I choose which universities I want to apply to. So I can easily select MacEwan, Norquest, and U of A. I'll apply to 3, for example. And it'll kind of funnel that information that I put in there and populate it into their website. And then through this process, these institutions will have access to my transcripts. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an example of what that looks like. And then on the other side, like I had mentioned, for example, some universities will say just to fill out an online application that just gets sent directly to them. Like the University of Saskatchewan is like that. So you just fill out their online application and it goes directly to them. There's not a centralized system. If students have a disability and they're unable to fill out an online application, then usually the school has supports in place to help with those students who might be facing a barrier in that way. For your documents, and schools can ask for anything they want. We've talked about this, right? So they might ask for a portfolio, they might ask for a progress report, they might ask for, like we talked about, like supplementary material. Like there's even like you might have to complete a fitness test for a program that's like aimed at getting into either fitness or policing or something like that. So once you've applied, the university will send you an email to acknowledge that they've received your application. Then they will send you a username and password so that you can get onto their online portal. And it will be called something different at each school, but most schools would have something like this. And this is where you can track if you need to submit anything, what the deadlines are, when you have to pay tuition deposit or accept your offer. All of this will be tracked within this like student online portal. And so in this portal, they will have instructions on how you submit this supplementary material. So like what format does it have to be in, how long, when. The online portal will have all of that instruction as to how to submit those documents.
Can you ever send too much?
I don't, that's a good question. Can you send too much? I think, I have students that face this, like I've been asked this a lot, and I don't think sending too much would disqualify you unless it was something to do with like a portfolio or something where they specifically give you like a word count, or like, let's say you have to submit 10 pieces and you submit like 20, like I would stay within the guidelines of what they've asked you to do. I'm not, just because it shows that you can follow direction, you can read instructions, you can, you're precise. I would think ideally you would kind of stay within the guidelines of what they're asking you for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. When it comes to like, okay, progress reports, most schools don't ask for those, but there are some that do. I don't think it would really harm you to submit additional, like if you were just a little bit worried and you just wanted to, make double sure, I'm just going to send them this additional progress report, or I'm going to send my transcript, even though it's already been sent. That's not going to harm a student. It's more just unnecessary.
One thing that I've actually come across, because I deal with this age level to like going into university, they're always, I don't know if it's a myth, but they're always saying, oh, I have to go out of country to get into a program that I wanted to get into because it's not as competitive. What's your opinion on that?
That is a great question. I also get this from students, and I've known people to go to the States or the UK or even Australia to pursue their academics. It's absolutely an option. I would say look into tuition, because if you're an international student, your tuition will be likely doubled, if not tripled. So if that's something you can afford and you can get in, absolutely pursue it. But the second concern I would say is, remember that first page we were looking at credentialing and licensing. So let's say you want to be a nurse, and you're like, wow, I just cannot get this like 90% average that I need to get into school here. So I want to look abroad. The important thing to look at is that because each province sort of legislates like what competencies a nurse has to have in order to be licensed in each province. If you go somewhere else to study to be a nurse, you want to make sure, if you're planning on coming back, that education is going to be recognized here, and that you can still get that license, and that you can work as a nurse here if that's your goal. If you're happy with staying there, that's fine. But because a nursing degree somewhere else might not be equivalent to a nursing degree here, and then you might be in the same position where you still have to go back to school here to get that level of education that we require in order to be a nurse. Does that make sense? So I would just really, really be cautious and do your research on if that degree at that other school in that other country that you want to go to is recognized, and what the steps are of having that international qualification or credential assessed here in Canada or in your province or territory.
Okay, no, I think that's great insight. So in case it doesn't, right, is there like a competency test that you can do to kind of match your levels here?
Mm-hmm. There would be, but it would totally depend on what program, what degree, where you went to school. So for some, it might just literally be simple. All you have to do is submit your transcripts to the licensing, like the regulatory body is what we call it. So you submit your transcripts, write an additional test. And if the competencies are the same, it might just be as simple as that. It might take you a couple of months. But if you find I think the biggest key to this point is usually there's not shortcuts. When students are really trying to find a shortcut, usually there's not. Like, for example, many of my students want to be dental hygienists, and in Alberta, you have to have a degree. But in Ontario, you don't. You can do it like a 18-month or 2-year diploma program. But that program is not the same or equivalent to the program here in Alberta. So if they want to come back and work here, they're going to have to take supplementary courses to get them to that same level. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it just totally depends on which career it is, and like how strict it is. Yeah. And that totally varies by province and by those like licensing, like the regulatory governing bodies. give the licensing.
Now, would experience matter in that situation? So you've done the Ontario diploma course and you've been working for, let's say, 5-6 years, and then you move to Alberta.
Mhm.
It could experience matter, or do you still have to take your courses?
If it's a career that requires a license, then your experience will, of course, help you with gaining employment. But if you have to have a license, then it may or may not. When you go to the regulatory, like, governing body, there may be a place to say, like, yes, I worked this many years doing this. Can that count for something? It's possible, but I would not say that it's like guaranteed for sure. I actually used to provide online advising to international, like, to people who were planning on immigrating to Canada, through the government. It was a program that worked to help people manage their expectations around international qualification assessment. So, like, so that they would be realistic and know it was going to take, like, how long it was going to take, how much it was going to cost. So that was actually, yeah, I did that for almost a year, and it's a little bit frustrating, I think, for many people who have international education, because it's often not assessed at the same competency level of with, like, here in Canada. So it's actually an issue, I would say. So I would be just really cautious, I think, and
Okay.
just really do your research. Just not saying it's impossible, but just so that your expectations are managed, so that you know how long it will take and if it will cost money.
Now, on the other side of that, let's say you are in Ontario using the dental hygienist program. If, let's say, you do plan on moving, but you're currently in Ontario, you're going to be in Ontario for a few years before you leave. Is there a nationalized testing that can be done in Ontario so you don't have to do it when you do get to Alberta?
Not that I'm aware of for that career. There are, like, in the trades, there are, like, Red Seal certifications, for example, that make it so that you can work across Canada very easily. But I'm not aware of that particular career. I think it's provincially licensed. Like, remember that first one of those that, like, through the job bank,
Yes.
you would be able to see the licensing for each province. So you could double check, but I don't think so, sadly,
Okay.
because most education, yeah, the trades have worked really hard to have, like, a possibility of doing that, but I don't know. Like, even for me, like, I have my Bachelor of Education degree, but if I wanted to go teach in BC or somewhere else, like, I'd have to go through the, like, they'd have to evaluate my transcripts, my experience, my license to see, and then I might have to take a course or two in order to be a teacher there.
Okay. Yeah, I think the nationalized, because nursing, you can do nursing nationalized, right?
Nursing is also provincial.
Is it provincial? Oh,
Mhm. Yeah. It's not to say that it's not, like, possible. It's just that students should be aware that there will be steps you have to take.
mhm. Okay. Okay. So there is no shortcuts, as you said.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is, like, I can understand why somebody would want that, but there's not, if something seems too good to be true, it usually is.
Yeah, for sure.